Hello, this is Low Gelder, and this is another installment of Let's Talk Consciousness. And I know that most of these videos begin with me more or less reiterating what I'm doing, so I'll try to be brief. These are a series of videos meant to explore various topics of life through the lens of this being a conscious experience. So, in the Eastern philosophy, kind of Buddhist Hindu take on things, that life is more of a drama than a creation, in a kind of hard and physical way, more so like a dream. What do you do with that? And if that's true, how does it affect your day to day decisions? And the main thrust of all these is that if that's true, I think then it gives us an incredible incentive to become more loving and forgiving of ourselves and of others, in a nutshell. And that's not easy, and there's lots of situations where you might think that's unthinkable. So the point of this is to go through those, to go through various scenarios. I'll be using my personal experience. I'll try to draw on stories that are in the news, or popular, or just on people's minds, I guess. But in keeping with that idea of going towards popular subject matter, I'm going to dive right into politics, which is not really, it's not something that I enjoy talking about. I mean, I used to, but I've kind of disengaged from a lot of it. But I just think it's a prudent example to look at Donald Trump, because most people seem to really dislike him. I would say that, putting aside judgment, if I'm just to go with how I react to somebody being themselves ostensibly, then no, I don't really care for that person either. I mean, but in keeping with the idea that it's, I wouldn't say it our duty, but it's like this goal, or this kind of reconfiguration to be loving of others, even people that we might say are terrible. This went out. There's a tragedy. Hold on. So if somebody is particularly personally odious, just an awful person you wouldn't want to be around, let alone give them responsibility or dominion over you in some way. But that's the situation we find ourselves in. I still think there is an interesting exercise in trying to apply that unconditional love and forgiveness. And to me, it makes the most sense in this kind of Eastern reincarnational model. I think if we really all just came to be once, and when we died, that was it, which I spent a large part of my life with that take on reality. But if that were the case, I would say it's probably pretty unfair that things happen the way they do, and that spending time trying to forgive people is a fool's errand, because it's a pretty harsh and bitter place. That's one point of view, but I think if you look at it in the sense that this is a drama that we manifest from this larger consciousness perspective, that the unpleasant aspects of it, the tragedy, the dramatic side of it, is for us to learn and experience and grow, and to find out more of who we are, to see what we would do in these difficult situations. And I don't think Donald Trump is any exception to that. I think being in a system where he's in charge is another test of sorts. It's unfortunate. I would have rather gone a different way, but here we are. So I think it is important to look at it in that way, that even the worst of us who are doing the most heinous things are bringing something into the universe that has a purpose, and that's not easy to say when you're suffering the consequences of that. And I don't know who even to go to as a good example of people who are, I mean, because there's all kinds of shit going on. The first thing that comes to mind is just ripping the guts out of healthcare. And whereas I wouldn't consider myself a fan of our healthcare system, to see it go a certain way, and in my own life know that it meant that my wife and my kids, in different situations, that like healthcare situations have gotten easier because of laws that have passed in the last few years. To understand the relationship between Affordable Health Care Act and my own personal life, it means I have a stake in it. So when I see something like, for example, Republicans at large and Donald Trump among them trying to tear it down and not replace it with anything worthwhile, that personally affects me. It personally affects lots of people. It's a horrible situation. Um, so why would you want to forgive him if he's doing that? I mean, that's a tough one, and I think that I keep coming back to the idea that um, there is a drama that is playing out, and I don't think you have to like it. I don't think you have to sit idly by and take it. I think you can get involved and do whatever you think helps. Um, I think personally it's far more interesting to see what people do to help, not by trying to exert some sort of counter influence on the political system, but just kind of looking at the political system for for the absurdity that it is, and just trying to help the people who are affected by it. So, for example, now almost a decade ago, when the real estate market crashed and people were being foreclosed on, some people took it upon themselves to organize and to squat in empty houses to give people shelter when there were just tons of empty houses and tons of displaced people. And it was, I think, I don't know legally where that fell, but the point is, they looked at the system that was in place and just said, well, fuck that. That's not helping people. I can do something to help. And they did it. And to me, it's things like that that will probably get us out of the worst of this, is just this kind of like um, third way thinking. I actually don't even know where that phrase originates from, but the idea that if you were in a kind of polarity of like a black or white situation, to really think of a solution that's outside of that paradigm, and to step outside of that premise and reject it entirely. And so if you're looking at the political system and seeing it failing and going, I have to work within the political system to try to fix it, that's a duality that you benefit from stepping outside of, like these people did with their squatters, collective or whatever it was. I don't remember what it was called, but people just trying to do things to make it better. I mean, Planned Parenthood, they participate in the political system, so it's not exactly the same thing, but um, they they just go to people asking for money, and I mean, there's a lot of different sources for money for them, and that's kind of complex. But part of it is people, out of the goodness of their heart, just giving money to Planned Parenthood to support it, and obviously if federally money is taken away or laws are passed or whatever the thing is that makes it harder for them to do that, they may less and less be trying to. It's maybe not the best example, but that they still have this life source through people just doing it on their own voluntarily, and not having it be part of the political system. So I think that's a kind of silver lining to things degrading more and more as time goes on, is that it forces us to kind of find solutions outside of that system. So in a way, you might even look, not necessarily that Donald Trump would be like a kind of instrument of that in any intentional way, but you may look at him through a kind of failing upwards concept, that he may be through not intentionally, but he may actually be sort of pulling the wires out of things in terms of our political systems in such a way that it forces us to do something else. And that's the only real silver lining I can see out of this, is that it's like he's so catastrophically incompetent that it may shake loose things that may be replaced with things that are better, and that all of us can probably contribute in some way to that. I mean, just the base level of being optimistic about it, because honestly, believing that nothing will be better or nothing can improve, that doesn't help anybody. So having the sense that it can improve, and then deciding what you want to do about it. But I don't know if I really made my point saliently. I just, from a conscious point of view, I think it's all drama. And, okay, I realize there's one other side of this, and then I'll wrap it up, which is Alan Watts, I think, characterizes this idea best in terms of loving somebody who's really fucked up and doing fucked up shit, is that, when you see a good play on a stage, or a movie more commonly, you don't look at the actor who played the villain and curse them. You realize that they are playing a role. They're participating in a drama that needs a villain in order for it to unfold as a story. I think from a kind of reincarnational consciousness model of reality, that tends to be a way to frame it that makes it easier to let go of hard feelings towards other people, whether they're world leaders or people you work with, or people you go to school with, people you're in relationships with, family, whoever, um, that their role and the negativity that what you see as negativity that they bring is a really vital ingredient in a wonderful, beautiful, enriching story. So I think that tends to be true, and particularly of really heinous people as well. So if you can watch them, take off their costume and regard them for being the performer that they are in this crazy drama, I think that makes it easier to kind of let go of the hard feelings. But it is a challenge. So with that said, I wish you all luck.